Before we get started, just a quick note about something you hear at the end of the show. In the credits, I mentioned that Nate Schweber does the music. And don't worry, he still does, but I wanted to tell you that he's got a new album out. It's called Gaps, and it's available for download or in handy CD format, and I invite you to check out nateschweber.bandcamp.com to listen to snippets and to add it to your musical collection. Thanks for supporting independent musicians. And now, here's that familiar Nate tune to get us started. I'm John Hall. Welcome to Drink Beer, Think Beer, the podcast that gets to the bottom of every pint. This week marks the year that this show has been on the air, and it's been one for the ages, and hopefully one, in the larger scheme of things, that we won't replicate again. Onward to the good things, the happier times, and strong health. A year ago, I was in Belgium in a barrel room and kicked off the show with Matt Brendelson of Firestone Walker. You might remember that we spent a lot of time talking about foam. This year, to mark a full calendar being tossed away, I have JC Tetreault of Trillium on the show, and we spend a lot of time talking about F-words, farming, fans, the future, festivals, and yes, foam. JC has packed a lot into the 8 years his brewery has been open. He's helped establish beer styles, he's had tremendous growth, has been the subject of intense scrutiny where he's had to defend the brewery and its reputation, and throughout it all, he's been tinkering and making moves and adapting and trying to keep his thoughts on his passions and actually what brought him into beer in the first place. We'll talk about all of that. Sadly, there's no Barry White, but JC did speak to me from his basement, so that's close at least. And I started off by asking him about the big topic that's been on everyone's mind for the better part of 2020. Here's our conversation. How's your pandemic going?
Probably about it's honestly it's probably better than most people. We've I've got good family support with the success of Trillium, and kind of like we've built up enough of a cushion to withstand things. We weren't sort of like right on the edge of solvency when this thing hit, and it just kind of knocked a whole bunch of folks over the edge. And um, we we were able to kind of make some quick business changes and kind of see our way to the other side of this, if and when there is another side. So, everybody's got their own levels of stress and own levels of responsibility around what's going on with COVID in the current business and world environment, but you kind of have to take a step back and look into the context of what our fellow humans are also going through. So I will always kind of throw the caveat into the answers, like we're doing pretty good, and I'm very aware of that.
Early on, you guys did, to use the early pandemic term of pivot, and you did close down some of your locations, and you started doing delivery, and you started doing all of the things that brewers needed to do to stay top of mind, to keep cash coming in while keeping everybody safe. You had A teams and B teams working in your facilities, to prevent from infection spreading. Knowing now, or where we are right now, is there something that you know now that you wish you could go back and tell your March self to get ready for?
Anytime that we've been through something extremely stressful, I wish I could tell myself that this isn't as bad as it appears to be. You and your team are going to figure out a way through this, and we'll be stronger and smarter and closer and more resilient. So I just wish I would figure out a way to save myself the stress that I put myself, and I'm sure I'm kind of wearing it on my face a lot too, and kind of sharing that stress with others. I wish I could figure out a way to not do that both to myself and the people around me. That said, what people told me that, Esther and I showed strong leadership. We figured out a way to kind of rally the team and kind of let them do what they do really well. And we kind of really cohesively formed a path forward in the best that we could with the resources that we have, with the team that we have, with the culture that we've built, and the trust that our customers have in us. And and kind of reacted to it the best we could. I think that we probably wouldn't have been as fatalistic about the trajectory that we thought the government was going to put us under.
Mm-hmm.
We all the signals that we were getting from the government at the time were we were going to have to close our doors. And being a manufacturer, being in a production environment, closing your doors means kind of everything anything that was in process is now literally down the drain.
Right.
So we were so we basically stopped making beer. We didn't just like pull our foot off the pedal. We just stopped, and we started packaging everything that was in process, and then we weren't making any new beer, which was exactly the wrong thing to do at that moment in time.
Yeah, you were sitting there with empty tanks.
Yeah. Yep. Right at the same moment, actually the timing was working out well for when we would plan to actually shut down. Like that was the trajectory was playing out. We were told, bring your tap rooms and restaurants to 50% occupancy,
Mm-hmm.
and then less than 24 hours later, Governor Baker said close. So we thought, okay, the next thing is any non-essential business close, which he did say that.
Yeah.
For some reason, alcohol manufacturers were deemed an essential business, and everybody, it was kind of like
to the argument of nobody listening to the show right now.
Yeah, I think everybody was kind of going through the weird emotional thing. It was like being called an essential thing or not,
Yeah.
So that aside, we were okay to continue to operate in the government's eyes, but both Esther and I were like, well, should we, even though we're okay to operate, should we continue to operate? So we were, I don't know. Like I said, it was kind of day to day at that point, and we were expecting to either want to close the business because of the risk to our team members, or the government was going to make us. So one of those two scenarios was going to play out. So we stopped making beer, and we're kind of just packaging and kind of preparing to wind things down and just kind of go into a hibernation mode. And we also kind of in parallel said, well, I think we would all feel safe if our team members were practicing all the things that we practice now, and we were doing curbside truly contactless delivery. So we started to do that, and then we just saw demand absolutely skyrocket. So I think in May we sold the most beer that we ever sold via curbside than we had sold in our existence in a given month. So
Wow.
it was we kind of had to quickly do an about face and just started making, basically started making the capacity level amount of our facility in Shaman.
When you say something like that, where you have a great month and you're seeing people coming through the door, I've been talking with a lot of brewers and owners about stress levels, and how it seems like for the last 8 months we've all collectively, I think as individuals and as a group, have been just clenching ourselves very tightly, and everybody is feeling enormous pressure, enormous stress. When you have moments like that, are you permitting yourself to relax just a little bit, to sort of see a glimmer of hope for the long term? And
so, yeah, I mean, Esther and I have a good partnership in that way. When one of us is feeling the weight of the world and like, oh my God, my kids or my family, or what does our team feel safe? Do they feel like, are they feeling the stress? Is there anything that we could or should be doing better so they're not upset? And you start to spiral. You start to not, keep waking up at 1 a.m, 3 a.m, 5, just keep doing that to yourself.
yeah,
The other, Esther helps to pick me up, and I do the same for her. And we never, for some reason, we're never sort of going down the hole at the same time together. So
that's important.
Yeah. I think it kind of works in a great partnership sort of way. So, and
And
that's not to say that, we don't struggle with that with one another. It's kind of this funny thing. It's like, come on, let's go, get up. Let's tackle this thing. We kind of go through some of that, but, I like I said, my biggest kind of wish for a redo on this stuff is to not be so stressed about it myself, because I do know the negative impact that can have on others.
And what about the rest of your team as well? I mean, you guys have been put through the ringer at various points in your existence, and your team is sort of, accustomed to, having a target on them at some point, and the stresses that come with that.
Yeah.
Have there been, like, how has COVID impacted, the Trillium family? I'll use that word, through all of this, because you guys have been through things together. Like, do you, do you know each other's stressors and tells, and have the ability to sort of help everybody move forward in a meaningful way? Like, I'm just thinking about mental health right now, and the stressors that everybody has.
Yeah, as you should. I think I think the the kind of universal nature that everybody has about health um, is a relatively new phenomenon, or at least a kind of not really in our generation, or the 100-year storm kind of feeling. We haven't really had that. Usually, when somebody's going through a health concern, it's it, it, they've got other people to kind of shoulders to kind of cry on a little bit. Now it's everybody kind of walking around, and in the days it's a different feeling. So I think that generally our team, which we kind of with the different kind of operations that we had to run, we had to reduce our team dramatically in order to kind of reconfigure to our new operational model. We just Esther and I decided a long time ago that we wanted to move Trillium from the idea of growing to just a, I don't want to say just, because it's something that other people, it's a path they pursue, but we didn't want to be just a production brewery and kind of just do the thing that you read about, and kind of how a typical growth trajectory looks like for breweries, and kind of growing volume and going into a new market and signing on a new wholesaler and start sending beer out to California and growing in that way.
Yeah.
We wanted to kind of grow the hospitality component, and really that's how we saw ourselves evolving. And we just made that decision a while ago, after we kind of get our legs under us with the kind of the ability to grow the volume, produce the volumes that we needed to out of the Canton facility. So the vast majority of our revenue came from, past tense, I guess, our on-premise locations, which are full. There's 4 spots
Yeah.
that people come to, which are now, as of yesterday, those are all closed. And it's not just, I don't get to go to Trillium to have a beer anymore. That's 4 locations that had 4 separate teams and the set of managers that oversaw that whole thing, and facilities, and like all the infrastructure that comes along with that. Last year at our peak during the middle of the summer, we're close to 300 people, and now we are 1/6 of that.
Yeah.
So with kind of like with the team kind of shrinking like that, and I'm working on the packaging line. I am in the warehouse cleaning up grain. I am brewing. I'm going out and doing deliveries with team members, and it's like, I think that the whatever it takes mentality, and we're doing this not just for today, but so that we can, when it's time and it's safe for everybody to come back, there'll be a company here for them waiting and welcome them back with open arms. We can finally hug again.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think a lot of folks are going through this, and I think that I think our team has we've been very good at making sure we allow for the difficult days, and kind of asking everybody, what do you need right now?
Yeah.
We have a service that we've employed to kind of, knowing that there's just personal things that people are going through right now. So we have a service that can help them, whether it's a mental health issue, whether it's a family health thing, financial matter, whatever it might be, that they can get help from, that's not like your manager. Sometimes you just don't feel comfortable opening up to a coworker or your manager or whatever it might be.
Yeah, you don't want to get painted in a certain light down the
Nope.
road. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're we try to think about, what if I was in somebody else's shoes going through a really rough spot, what could we do? So And even for the folks that we did have to furlough, we're covering their, talk about health, we're covering their health insurance 100% until we can get them back. So
Yeah.
we're doing what we can, but at the same time, there has to be a company to come back to. So
You mentioned two things that I think are related that I'm sort of curious about. That you had four places, or you still do, although not all of them are open. But early on, you mentioned that when COVID first hit, that you weren't necessarily on the edge of collapse or overextended, and that you had a nice cushion. And I'm curious as to how you have approached growth over the years that you've been open. Over the it's about 8 years now, right?
yeah, it was 7 this past March, so about
Yeah.
7.5 or so.
So I'm curious as to you know, how you manage the growth, because there are people who hit a huge winning streak like you have, and they overextend themselves. They do start sending to California, or they take on huge projects, and then they find their debt ratio is out of control, and they
Yeah,
go away.
yeah,
And where you're living and working and operating is not necessarily an inexpensive part of the country. So I'm curious as to how you've approached the growth, and like when it makes sense for you to do something new or to bring
sure.
on some of these new projects.
Yeah, I mean, Esther and I don't have like we don't have anybody to answer to, but ourselves. We don't have any investors saying, I need to see 40, 50, 60% return on my capital. And then there's that stress, and when you're stretching and stretching, and you're like, all right, double down, double down, double down. It's not what we do. It's not what we ever wanted to do. Um, some of our growth has largely been dictated by the experience that we want to be able to provide to our customers, who come visit us. So I, I remember, when we were talking about, the Fort Point location, and we finally got presented with this opportunity and the size of it, and relative to all the other places we looked at, because we really wanted to stay in our home in Fort Point. And we were looking at the other spaces. It's a small little tiny little part of Southie and Boston. So we probably looked at 15 different locations of the places that were actually available, right? So
Mm-hmm.
over the last 4 or 5 years, and they all felt too small. And we knew that we had a pretty incredible following of this incredible passion, not just from like beer nerds, but from people in the neighborhood and all over Boston, all over the suburbs. It was incredible. People coming to see us from all over the place. So thinking about opening a place that was reasonable and like, a pretty big size, like 150, 200 seats in Fort Point. And we're just like looking at each other like, this is gonna be shitty for people that come visit us. It's just gonna be packed all the time. It's gonna suck. So we ended up at the place right now. It swells to 500 seats in the summertime, and all the real estate people and all the restaurateurs are looking at us like we're insane, like we're like we're we're just crazy, because that's way too big. Nobody could do that.
Yeah.
But we had the understanding that in order for us to provide the kind of experience, and we're going to get that kind of response, you don't want it there to be like a 3-hour wait. That's not Lines aren't cool. They're not certainly not durable anyway. So they're just not cool. So we opened up a place that, and by the book, was stupid. It was way too big. But we kind of, we kind of took the signal that we were getting from our fans, from our customers, from the neighborhood, that was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we kind of look at opportunities as they come along, and if they fit for us, and they fit for our team, and they fit for our customers, and it feels right, and it feels special, then that's something that we're going to do. And we kind of gut check ourselves all the time, and is this still fun? Does this feel doable? Is our team having a good time? Is it something for them to grow into? Is this too much of a stretch? Just you kind of just have those open conversations with ourselves and with the management team. And there's no there's no like, oh, here's the financial goal. We must earn this much by, in our year. Of course, we've got financial covenants that we need to make. We need to hit with our bank, because we have traditional bank loans.
Hmm.
But there's no like financial goal for us to make a certain amount of money. Um, it's really about kind of executing to the best of our ability, the goal and the vision that we have for hospitality, and that's always going to be a work in progress as we take the time and over the course of our lifetimes to realize the vision for the New England Farmhouse Brewery. And what that exactly means is something that has yet to be realized, and we're working on that every day. But that's not something that happens overnight either.
And I mean, these new places that you've had, or that you've opened, or that you've moved into, um, I guess some people think of once a brewery gets into a space, unless they have to move out for larger purposes, that's going to be a permanent home. But it almost sounds like to me that you guys are, that it's almost like nothing is sacred. And I mean that in a good way of, if this just isn't working out or this just doesn't feel right, that you could change the plans and do something else or someplace else.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the two spots that we have, or I guess the three spots in Boston that we have, I wish we could have bought them, or be owners or part of them, or whatever that might be. But that's not the area of the country that we live in. It's
Right.
not. These properties are not for sale. They're owned by uh, large groups that own multiple properties as part of a collection and are part of like a pension plan, kind of those kinds of places. So unfortunately, they're also the kinds of places that are not interested in working with you in the times of a pandemic to reduce their rent either. So to the degree that we can have a reasonable, good partnership over the life of the lease, that is something that we are very committed to. But since we're not owners, we also can't be married to a location either.
Right.
And if you would have said 10 years ago, if you can kind of go into your Wayback Machine, imagine what the beer world was 10 years ago to today, and now zip forward another 10 years, imagine what it's going to be then. I'm sure you almost can't imagine what the beer world is going to be. So I think some of that flexibility that we have, and kind of the constant evolution of what Trillium is going to be in the context of the beer world, of hospitality, and frankly, rising sea levels in Fort Point Channel and Boston. So
Yeah.
I hope that the I hope that there's still sea levels that will allow seawater to not be coming down into the tap room in 10 years, but I don't know that that's true.
When you were getting ready to open, I was going back through some notes and some interviews that I did with you back in 2011, and you were talking about your vision for, quote, new American craft. That's what you wanted to be doing.
Hmm.
And I'm curious as to how that relates to what you were just saying about, perfecting or finding a groove with the New England Farmhouse Brewery. Has the trajectory changed in your mind? Are those one and the same?
So to be fair, and I think you'd probably say this about yourself, knowing you a little bit, John, I was wildly naive in 2011.
Yeah.
And again, it's like a totally different world just 9 years ago when I was thinking about it. I think a lot of the concepts and a lot of the romance that I had in 2011 and even well before that, that's still a large part of my makeup. I think the path to getting to that kind of that new American craft beer concept, or the New England Farmhouse Brewery concept, has taken a different path and a different road, and is actually a lot shorter than what I originally thought was possible. I thought maybe in like 20, 30, 40 years, towards the end of my tenure here, and whatever I was going to be doing in my productive years, maybe we'd be then kind of figuring out how to find a piece of land to start farming and actually start to realize it for ourselves. I had no idea that the kinds of hobby beers that we were going to be making at that point would turn into at least some level of contribution that Trillium has had on the broader beer world and these hazy or New England IPAs. So no, I definitely didn't envision that path. Didn't understand the impact that was all going to have, and our own trajectory to kind of realizing that path. But I don't think a lot of people today are super familiar with what our goals are in that regard, and why did we buy a farm? Why do we even care about that sort of stuff?
Right.
We've got our spontaneous program that's about 4.5 years going now, and we're just about to start packaging those, and I'm super excited about that direction and kind of the realizing realizing the romantic notion of what a true New England farmhouse beer could be, in our own expression of that. It takes kind of for the aspirational goals that we have related to Trillium, it feels like it's probably going to take a lifetime to get there.
I mean, it's sort of interesting. In this profile that I wrote of the brewery back in 2012, I was talking about the flower, the Trillium, and how it can take 7 or so years for it to bear its first bloom. And it seems like you sort of beat those odds and expectations. But now that you're headed into year 8, are you now sort of realizing, what you want the brewery to be going forward?
I think that the steps ahead of us, again, this year notwithstanding, I think the steps ahead of us are so much clearer and so much easier now than they were in the early couple of years. I mean, it was really like I still remember I put in a credit application for an American Express because I was going to be able to get $10,000 of credit with no interest, no payments for 12 months. And no bank was talking to me at that time. And, craft brewery, yeah, okay, what's your experience? None? Okay, no. And hang up the phone. So, everything was just such a complete struggle. I was getting up at 4 a.m. I'd get some work done for my regular job, and then I'd be in the Home Depot parking lot at 6 o'clock to pick up some fucking tubing or whatever and go to the brewery, try to install it as fast as I could, and then, oh shit, I got to go to my other job that's paying for all of this. And everything was such a total struggle. Everything was so rigged. Everything was, you put, it was really crappy. It was really bad. It was very difficult. And we thought a lot about, is this even worth it? That's like the thought that's in your head all the time when you're just killing yourselves. It's like, is this even worth it? What are we doing here?
Is that present tense or future tense? Though?
No, that's what I was experiencing in the early days, and I don't have that feeling anymore. I have just this incredible hope and optimism for where we're going as a team, and and the kind of incredible pride for the opportunities that we're able to provide to our team members, or come up with an idea, and there's really next to no limitations about what we're able to do creatively with our beers, and how we're then going to be applying that to the kind of agriculture and the kind of hospitality, the kind of food, and the kind of spaces and experiences that we're able to provide to people. And that's sort of like, those are the goals. It's not the money goals. It's like, those are the goals about what we want to be able to do.
So where does the farm that you've purchased fit into all this?
Yeah, I mean, it's really kind of everything kind of conceptually flows through agriculture and the farm. So the North Stonington location where our 163 acre farm is located has just completed next week will be the last harvest for the year. And that is kind of that's really the heart of everything that we want to be able to do. Of course, beer and food is everything kind of flows and stems through the agricultural world. And Um, any good chef or any kind of brewer will tell you that you're only as good as the ingredients that you have that you're working with. And I think that as I started to study and learn more about agriculture and the inextricable link between the world around us and the environment and the quality of the food and the health of the food, and the practices that a farmer executes, they're all tied together. So um, I don't want to say that we're going to be kind of we're John, we talked a couple times. I got these crazy aspirations. I really just want to be able to serve as a model for what others can learn from. I'm happy to stoked to do tons of hard work, and then say, everybody, come here, check this out, carve this little, take best practices of what we've built here and carve that little niche out in your part of the world and replicate that, because it's good for you, it's good for your team, it's good for the earth that you're going to be growing in, and it's going to make the best possible ingredients for the best possible beers and food and hospitality. And that that is something I get very excited about. That's the stuff that's not really, you can't really commoditize that. You can't really take that stuff and scale it and sell it to a VC and do an IPO, take it public, and get a bunch of people that are rich even richer.
Yeah.
That stuff's really exciting to me. To build communities around this in a way that feels not only just feels good, it feels right, it's intuitive, and it's just better for everybody in every possible way.
I'd be remiss if I didn't talk to you about IPA, because when people look back, and you're saying it's impossible to go back 10 years and say what it would be like 10 years from now, because even going back through some of my books from the time and articles at the time, I couldn't imagine, COVID aside, 2020 looking this way in the beer space as I did at the beginning of 2010. And so much of the New England style, hazy, juicy, whatever, that the country has become enamored with, people look to you for guidance on that. And I remember some of the early days of visiting the brewery and seeing like a centrifuge, and you guys, like putting, not only creative spins on it, but also, technical know-how, and trying to find ways to make the beer, stand head and shoulders above the others. And I'm curious, now that you're a couple years into this style and considered a leader of this style, how much of the innovation, how much of the creativity, how much of the pushing your self forward in all of this is coming from you and your team versus what you're hearing from drinkers and what drinkers might want?
I actually haven't checked Untapped or Beer Advocate or Rate Beer in years, and that is a very freeing thing for me.
I'll bet.
Because
Yeah.
I don't know if you feel this way about the internet, but man, it's a rough place out there. So
Yeah, I don't spend a lot of time on there. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So we do our best to listen to our customers who are nice enough to send us messages, whether they're nice or not, and just try to be open and honest with ourselves.
But
What
to
is
that point,
what is
though, I imagine
yeah.
people reaching out to you directly versus some anonymous idiot in his basement spouting out off after a couple of beers on a large forum. That personal connection of somebody taking the time to actually write to you means a lot more than bottle caps or
Well, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, I try to remain a little agnostic to it, right? Because like, if you get too, of course, I'm personally invested, right? If you get too personally invested with like you're going to get pissed at the dude who's writing up notes on Untapped that are, objectively false.
Yeah.
If you got to get worked up about that, then you're spinning your wheels. You're spending a lot of energy on something that is, um, it's not getting you or your team or your customers anywhere. So, and that's not to say I haven't spun my wheels in the past on those things, but I feel it's not the best aggregator of good information for us. Our best methodologies are to listen to our actual customers and to broaden the input from our whole team. Instead of having a smaller circle, just by nature of our team being really small earlier versus on the larger side today,
Mm-hmm.
uh, you know, make it a process that is democratic, make it a process that is open, has a mechanism for open discussion, as well as an anonymized way to submit information. And JC gets one vote, and brewer X gets one vote, and seller person Y gets another vote. And it's not just me saying, yes, this is good, I don't care what anybody else says, move forward with it. That's not how we do things.
Yeah. So what sort of things rise to the level when you start hearing from folks of, okay, maybe we should look into that? Is there an example of something that's happened, I don't know, in the last year, two, whatever, that has
Yeah, I
sort of,
mean,
yeah.
I think that there's part of what I think is really interesting about these beers is they're an ephemeral may not be the right word, right? I think they're just they have they have a lifespan, and you can look at that as a positive thing or a negative thing, or just acknowledge that that is the nature of these kinds of beers. And I think that by and large, customers, not just of beer but anything really, whether you're buying uh, a Samsung TV or a magazine or something, everybody expects the thing that they buy to be static. They think it's fixed in a moment in time, and it should not change from the day that you order it to the day it arrives at your home, or you go pick it up in the store, to the time you decide to take it out of the bottle.
Yeah.
It just is a thing, and that is not the nature of these kinds of beers. More so than lots of other kinds of beers. So, and then obviously the other notion that taste is very subjective. Some people absolutely love our beers, and they want us to package them quote unquote green. They want that edge to it. They like that bite. They like the super green hoppiness that it's like, sucking on a hop pellet. I'm not a huge fan of that. But some people are. So we're kind of constantly torn between the notion that we should be, we should provide that full range. We should package it on the earlier side. We should get it into people's hands when it has that. And if they don't like that, then they can just kind of hang out and just wait,
Yeah.
Um, but by and large, customers they want the thing that they want. And the part of the problem with these kinds of beers, they're not a static thing. They constantly change, even when stored in the best possible conditions. So when you kind of take that assumption as true, and somebody buys something, and then they tried it one time before, and they happened to try Vicinity Double IPA and at their buddy's house, and it was 4.5 weeks old at that point, and they just loved it, and then they come buy it from us the day that we package it. It's going to be a different beer, and they get very upset. So it's sort of a difficult conversation to have on an individual basis around those kinds of things. So I think we struggle with that mostly, and it's sort of how do you narrow that bell curve of how much they change, and should we even be trying to do that versus just educating people
Yeah.
on that there is even a bell curve exists.
What about the
I don't know.
visual?
You tell me, John. What should I do?
I don't know. I just drink lagers. But the visual aesthetics of this as well. I know you've been sort of toying around with that, with this style. I'm trying to lead you into the foam conversation as best I can, but you've been messing around with foam quite a bit, and it's sort of amazing to me where Instagram is filled with people drinking New England style, and that is something that is usually largely missing from the beers. There's just no, we're seeing a lot of Sierra Celebration photos right now, and a lot of them have this really nice rocky head of foam, and it just sort of looks like a classic beer, as opposed to sometimes a glass of pulpy orange juice, or hazy oat water or whatever. And I'm not saying that in a disparaging way, but the visual cues of something that of two styles that share the same three letters is striking to me at times. But you think about foam.
Well, I think about everything all the time.
Okay.
But foam is certainly one of those things. I think that the kind of the original impulses that we had from early were correct, and they're still in place now. But as we tick off the things that we're looking to improve on, I think foam is something that we're not where I want to be necessarily.
So where would you say you are, and where do you say you want to be?
Well, I'm not gonna give you the specifics, John. I think that I would like to see, I would think I would like to see just an improvement from where we are now, because I think that that's all you could ever ask of yourself. You don't want to say like, I want to reach this milestone, right? Because there's no such thing as perfection. So you just want to continue to improve from where you are today. I think that we want to see better and an improvement as a qualifier. And as that changes, and I don't want to be obtuse about it, but we do have quantitative measures for those kinds of things as well. As we nerd out on all things, there's actually specific tests and measures
Yeah,
that you
there's
can
science
do.
behind this.
Yes, always, of course, right? So we can quantitatively measure whether or not something that we've done or not done, or have stopped doing, has made a quantitative improvement on what we're doing. I think one of the things that we struggle with is that there's a little bit of plastic surgery in some parts of the beer world
Mm-hmm.
as it comes to foam. So there's basically additives that you can put in there that it's sort of a surefire recipe for making incredible, like kind of like,
Moose
pinup
like,
girl level,
whipped. Yeah.
pinup girl level of these insane, white meringue, these just impossible head formation and retention and lacing and stickiness and all those things that just aren't real. So it actually creates an expectation from folks that what they're looking at is what's possible with beer ingredients. So, which we know is not the case, but it's not something that we are gonna say we don't use those head formation additives. And I'm not accusing the larger beer world of doing that either. I just know that there are
Yeah.
some very specific examples of those that kind of creates that expectation that is even possible with only beer ingredients
So
in the best possible practices.
So as you're moving forward with your foam ambitions, you're not trying to use this plastic surgery. It's the term you used, but like
No.
you want to go.
We don't use any of those kinds of additives. We don't use any quote unquote natural flavors, which I think is like the most ridiculous thing that people. Oh my God, there's so many beers that use those flavors that I have a personal tough time with it. I'm not sitting in judgment of others that enjoy them or like them. For us,
I don't know. It sounds like you are just a little bit, but that's
it just does not sit right with me. So like that is that's why Trillium has never put out a maple beer. You cannot get maple flavor from using maple syrup in a beer. So
what's an example of an ingredient that you've used where a very little bit has gone a long way for flavor?
I mean, on a total weight or total quantity or volume per barrel, it's probably vanilla. You can use a half a pound of vanilla per barrel and get this unbelievable flavor and aroma in some texture, and it changes the existing flavors and aromas in a way that I think by weight is hard to match, really.
I'm running low on time with you, I know, but I'm curious about, to sort of bring this back to where we started. When you have all of these locations and you're used to the beer fans coming and lining up and getting beer to go, but also where you were in Boston proper, you were probably getting a lot of tourists and folks who were coming through for the first time, or people bringing their friends, beer people bringing their friends and introducing them to your food and your beer and your brand of hospitality. With that gone, at least temporarily, how are you trying to reach new fans? How are you trying to bring new people into the fold? Because craft is pretty strong with its fan base, but for real growth, you're going to need new people to come by. How have you been doing that outreach
Yeah,
since COVID?
we've never had like a strategy. We're going to get this. We're going to get this demographic. We're going to capture this, and we're going to see a 32% increase in uh, females aged 35 to 65. We've never done stuff like that. It's just all been an organic process. Um, and it's still the case. We just don't have like those tools in our tool belt anymore where we can make a place and people can come visit it, and you just can't do that. So it's a hard thing. I mean, we over the past summer we've been doing, we did like a couple, Zoom tastings and things of limited, 40 people and that kind of thing. But man, it's tough. We're just relying on word of mouth still. It's kind of like the original approach that we started with, and people sharing things. We're still trying to do as much as we possibly can with some of the philanthropic things, but even those options are limited. We did a 5K in the spring, a virtual 5K in the spring. We're doing another one in a few days here, and we get 1,000 people to sign up for that, which is pretty cool. And that's a lot of fun. People from across the country. We had committed to sending some beer out to some of our friends in the Paul from Cloudwater in the UK, and we sent some down to Joss in New Zealand. That should be landing soon, and but those are things that we had planned before all this had happened. So I don't know, man. It's like we don't really have, like I said, we never had lived in that world or we don't have like a growth plan necessarily. We just
But
I don't know.
without those physical locations,
Yeah.
because that would happen organically. People would just
Yeah.
hear word of mouth or read a review or whatever, and they'd have an excuse to go. And without that, I was just sort of curious if there was a.
I mean, I don't mean to give you a non-answer, but man, it's like I don't know that there really is much. There's really not many options right now. I mean, you're a beer drinker, John. Doesn't it suck to be just only drinking beer at home?
Yes.
And like have that idea and that possibility is like, oh, I'm gonna go. It's gonna be like back in the lockdown moments, and I'm gonna call up a group of friends, and we're gonna do like a Zoom happy hour. Fuck.
Yeah, I know.
Dude.
I'm trying to teach my daughter how to be a proper bartender, but all she's really good at is cutting me off. Future wise, though, and you're no stranger to both attending and hosting festivals. What does that future look like? Where we sit right now? Do you think we'll even be able to do beer festivals in 2021? Would you do a beer festival in 2021?
I don't see those happening, or at least I don't feel comfortable attending one. I'm not traveling anymore until we get onto the whatever it looks like to be the other side of this, and hopefully that's in a hopefully in a community vaccination world where this is kind of settled back to hopefully at worst a background level of handful of cases.
Yeah.
So I don't really see an adapted festival world. I see going back to what we were doing before, and an evolved process that we had before. I'm still optimistic, and that there is going to be a return to what the world was before this was going on.
Well, I think as 2020 has taught us, it's don't count on it happening until it actually happens. But yeah. Thanks for sitting down and talking on the show, the 1 year anniversary show. It's good to hear your voice and good to chat with you.
Cheers, John. Miss you, buddy.
That's JC Tetreault of Trillium Brewing. We touched on it in our conversation, but some things are worth repeating. This has been an extraordinary year filled with too many stresses to count. And it's important to your health and to those around you to check in with yourself and others to make sure everyone is okay. You don't have to go through all of this alone. There are folks who support you and want to see you do okay, and so that we all come out on the other side of this together. Please don't forget that, and don't be afraid to speak up if something's bothering you. I certainly don't do the show alone. It's been great to be with all of you every week, every Wednesday without fail since we started, and I want to thank everybody for listening. Thanks for your support, for the notes, for the ideas, and the conversation. Let's keep it going. You can become a part of the This Week in Rausch Beer Facebook page. You can email me at johnhall@beeredge.com. That's JOHNHOLL. Or you can get with me on Twitter at John_Hall. If you remember, please leave a review of this show where you listen, and don't forget to subscribe to the Beer Edge podcast hosted by Andy Crouch. Steal This Beer, the show that I do every Monday with Augie Carton, Justin Kennedy, and Brian Cass, and to subscribe to the BYO Nano podcast, which comes out on the 15th of every month. Yes, it's a lot of podcasts. You can help out Nate Schweber, who does our music, by visiting nateschweber.bandcamp.com, and you can download his new album called Gaps, and you can give a virtual high five to Jeff Quinn, who designed our logo. It's a year in the books with many more to go. Thanks again for being a part of this, and please take care of yourself. I'm John Hall, and I'll be back again on these airwaves next week to drink beer and to think beer, and I hope you'll join me.